Hi, everyone. This is Robyn Carney from Hirewell here. I'm meeting up with Leah.
Hello.
We're super happy today. We're happy every day, but specifically today, we're excited to bring to you some information about Juneteenth, the history of why Juneteenth is observed as a national holiday, and then a little bit about how it's celebrated and the ways that your company might be able to support your employees and observe as well. So yeah, you ready to get into this?
Let's get into it, man.
Start with all the fun
local history buff, so.
It's like, I got to spend a day doing like 3 history reports, and I was like, I love my job. So this story actually starts, I'm not going to go back and talk about the history of slavery. Slavery existed in the United States for a very long time.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to actually just start with the Emancipation Proclamation, because a lot of times in school, when we talk about the Emancipation Proclamation, it's like, that's it, it's done, right? We'll talk a little bit more about the Civil War. We'll talk about like actual freeing of slaves and everything, and enslaved people throughout the United States. But this is the actual story of a little bit more detail what happened. Enforcement was slow. Also, the Emancipation Proclamation, which was made on January 1st, 1863, it only applied to Confederate states who had left the Union. It didn't apply to 2 states that were in the Union that had slaves, which were Delaware and Kentucky. Those 2 states continued until the 13th Amendment was written in 1865, December 6th specifically. And we could really go into the 13th Amendment and talking about that, but there's some documentaries about it, so we'll leave that conversation for another day. Enforcement across the Confederacy was slow even after the war ended, and it also didn't extend into the territories evenly. There was a group of Choctaw specifically who were not released until 1866, which does take place after Juneteenth. So speaking specifically about the African American experience. So June 19th, 1865, General Gordon Granger announced General Order Number 3 in Galveston, Texas. The General Order Number 3 basically said, people can't be enslaved anymore. It's over. We're done. It's ending. Like, it's over. And it was enforced. And that's it. That's when that became the actual recognized day of fully enforced emancipation, right? So it starts in Texas. Well, this particular day started being recognized in Texas because this took place in Galveston, Texas. The year after this proclamation, there was an anniversary celebration. And then the celebration spread throughout the South, right? In major areas. It wasn't heavily celebrated in the North until the Great Migration brought a lot of the Southern population up to the North. And there's also a group that observed in Mexico, which I love this detail. A group of people who had run away to Mexico celebrate this day, which I love. It ebbed in the Jim Crow era. It flowed during civil rights. It's been present throughout American history since it started. In the 1970s, Texas became the first state to recognize Juneteenth as a state holiday. Eventually, the majority of states recognized it, not South Dakota, according to where I was reading, but some places say that all 50 states recognized it. So we're not going to get into South Dakota today either. June 15th, 2021, so last year, President Biden finally recognized it as a federal holiday, which brings us to today. It's now a federal holiday. A lot of federal companies, of course, have the day off, which leaves other companies to figure out how they want to observe and celebrate. So, Leah, how is Juneteenth celebrated?
Yeah, so I mean, it's celebrated in a lot of different ways, and there isn't just like one, particular like specific way to celebrate it. But back in the day when it was first being memorialized, the anniversary was being memorialized and celebrated, it was kind of more spiritual. It was like prayer meetings and singing and things like that. Modern day celebrations are a little bit more festive. They could be parades, could be festivals, could be neighborhood or family get-togethers. The mainstay, one of the biggest ways of celebrating is through barbecues, basically. Food, music, friends, family. And one thing that I sort of always knew growing up, even though I'm not from the South, some of my people are from, so my dad's people are from Texas and other places in the South. And so I always associate Juneteenth with the color red. A lot of red foods are prominent, anything like punches or hibiscus tea. More recently, red velvet cake has become kind of a traditional Juneteenth food, which I love red velvet cake, so I love that. Red beans and rice, hot sauce, and fruits like strawberries and watermelon. So I was always told growing up that the reason why there were so many red foods in Juneteenth celebrations and barbecues was that it was to sort of in recognition of the bloodshed and sacrifice that led to emancipation. I did a little research, little light research, and I found some other correlations between the color red that some folks, some historians and food historians and African-American historians have pointed to as potentially being part of that tradition as well. So there are some other connections. So in many West African cultures, red is a symbol of strength, spirituality, and then also life and death. And then there's also two native fruits of West African plants, the cola and hibiscus, which are red. Like, I mentioned the hibiscus tea being a popular beverage for its red color. Some folks think that those African roots also impact the red beverages. And these days it's usually more like red soda pop or like red Kool-Aid, but I think folks probably still celebrate with hibiscus tea. It's very varied. A lot of folks consider it to be the 4th of July for Black folks. A lot of Black folks don't really feel really connected to the 4th of July as a holiday. And so they would use this as sort of their own celebration, kind of in a similar way of celebrating independence, right? So there's a couple of ways that corporations or organizations can observe it. A lot of places just are doing a day off since it is a federal holiday. That's absolutely fine. A lot of organizations that might be, predominantly white organizations with predominantly non-Black employees might consider doing something like a day of service instead of a day off, where together as an organization or as a company, they might either encourage their employees to do some kind of charity work or do it as a group, go serve in a food kitchen or something for the day. And then there's also plenty of folks who don't have it off. They don't have Juneteenth off. And for those organizations, if they're not wanting to have that be a day off for whatever reason, one thing that they can do is establish floating holidays so that folks who do want to celebrate Juneteenth and take it off have the option to do that. Or if there's something else, like a Jewish high holiday or Diwali or something like that, that they would rather take off, they can use it for that as well. Or if they just want to take off their birthday, what have you, So it can be used for a lot of different things, including anyone who would potentially like to take Juneteenth off to celebrate with their family or friends. And there can also be organizations will do maybe a little, like on social media, a little video of like the history of Juneteenth. Some organizations that we've worked with at Holistic have done little clips that they've put together of their African-American Black employees talking about what Juneteenth means to them or how they've historically celebrated it with their family and friends. So, there's lots of different ways to recognize the day. I was really excited that it was established as a federal holiday. There are a lot of folks who don't, Black folks specifically, that aren't crazy about it. They feel like it's being co-opted by white America as their own holiday, and they're kind of losing it as a Black holiday. I understand that feeling. I completely understand why folks would feel that way. For me personally, I think it's just an inclusive way of acknowledging that there are days of celebration that aren't all historically recognized on the Christian calendar, right? So yeah, I think it's overall a good thing. I'm excited for it. I wore red today in celebration. It's coming up on Monday. I'm stoked.
I did not get the memo. I'm so sorry.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, but okay, that makes sense. I want to appreciate, not appropriate, right? Like that's the whole thing that we've
exactly
had this conversation before, that it's not like if you are a white person and you're super excited about Juneteenth and you want to learn a little bit more and like participate, very important that you don't go out and create your own. Make sure that you are just invited to participate and don't appropriate events. Not at all cool to do that, I guess. So like talking about like a floating day of
Mhm.
a floating holiday is just generally a great way to be inclusive when you
Yeah,
are
I agree.
making a company policy, so
You're
that
doing fine.
the people within your company celebrate things in a way that might be different from the way that you celebrate
Right.
things. I know people who Christmas Eve is the big thing, Christmas Day is
Mhm.
not the big thing, right? Like Christmas Day is whatever. I'm always going to be super stoked to take the high holidays off. Just have unlimited PTO, I guess.
Yeah, that's the way to go. Seriously, just do it.
Yeah.
Folks will
So
get their work done. They'll get their
yeah,
work done. Just let them
right.
have as many holidays off as they deem appropriate.
Yeah. Just set a minimum that is what your PTO policy would have been. Make
Mhm.
that the minimum and just do unlimited PTO. But that's not what this video is about. This video is about the importance of appreciating and understanding that America is a beautiful and diverse place.
Mhm.
It's always a joy to learn something new and different that you never knew before.
I
Like,
learned something about Juneteenth today from you. So I learned a couple of things about Juneteenth from you. There was
really?
a lot about that in the history that I didn't know. So I thank you for doing the homework for me.
Yeah, I love that. I learned a lot about Juneteenth too. I also learned that hibiscus comes from West Africa. I did not know that. So
Right? It's delicious too. Hibiscus tea is delicious. Oh, so
it's
good.
very good. I do love it. On that note, I will say thank you so much for watching us today. Check out our other video for this month if you haven't yet for Pride. And make sure you check out what Hirewell's doing for Juneteenth. We're doing some cool things. Spoiler alert, it's a day of service. And we're also donating to a local organization here in Chicago. And I highly recommend that if you've been uncertain about how to appreciate and observe Juneteenth for your company, these are some suggestions that we have. Feel free to reach out if you have any questions. And I hope you have a lovely day.
Thanks so much for having me, Robyn.
It's always great.
Happy Juneteenth.